Hi, everyone. We are back with another episode of the Coliving Innovators podcast, where we bring co-living founders from around the world to talk about their co-living journey, their learnings, their mistakes, so that we can learn from them and not do the same mistakes again. This episode is brought to you by the Co-living Incubator Program by Art of Co, where we help co-living founders to start their co-living business from scratch to scale. If you're interested in starting your co-living space, do look at artofco/co-living incubator. Today, we have Frederic with us, right from Paris, the city of love. So Frederic's background was into contract negotiation. He has been in the corporate industry for about 17 years before jumping on and starting the Coco community in Paris. We'll get to learn a lot from his journey on how he did, why he did, and what he did. So welcome, Frederic.
Thank you, Mayank. I'm very excited to be there because I love what you are doing with Guy. It's amazing. It's bringing a lot to the industry. So I'm happy that I can also participate to discuss and improve the way co-living is executed.
Amazing. All right. So Frederic, it'll be good if you can talk about a little bit on why you left the corporate and what prompted you to start Coco community. What was your first kind of signals, and what's the starting story of Coco community? When did it start and how did it came into existence? Would love to know that.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a decision, to quit a large company and to start your own venture. What I did, as you said, was negotiation. So I was negotiating contracts around the world. My company was very international, and I was constantly traveling around the world to negotiate contracts with different cultures in different countries. And negotiation would usually last 3 to 5 years. So they were very complex negotiations for multi-billion-dollar contracts. And I had to really understand the culture of the persons with whom I was negotiating, or with the organization I was negotiating. I was a lot traveling to Asia and negotiating with Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, for example. And I had to stay in those different cities or countries for a couple of months. And then I would travel to another city where I had another negotiation. And I would go like that from cities to cities, countries to countries, for negotiating these contracts with a lot of teams on our side, on our company side, and with the teams of the customer. We had customers like Samsung, customers like Toshiba, big companies. And we were always staying at hotels and apart hotels I stayed at hotels and apart hotels like for 4 years in my life without any other house. I was just living at hotels. And with my colleagues, we were always surprised that there was no common space, to meet with others, especially in apart hotels or serviced apartments. You have your apartment, but it's usually very anonymous. The decoration is very cold, and you don't have any common space else than the lobby where nothing happens. It's usually always for the people that live in the building. You don't have any access to those buildings from the local people. And there was so it was difficult to meet with local people when you were living in those serviced apartments. And of course, you had no events and nothing going on in the apartments, in the common spaces. And hotels were not really better than that. So with some colleagues, we were always discussing why doesn't it exist. And so I started studying this field. I had no background in hospitality, no background in real estate. And I started to study and met with Coliving, which was founded by Guy and especially Fabrice and then Guy. And we did learning expeditions. And through those learning expeditions, I met with other co-living operators, and it started to make sense to me to leave my company in order to create a co-living project or concept for business travelers.
Okay. I think that's a very different story than generally what I hear from people who start their co-living space. But I think it's interesting that you staying in hotels, not having community space, not having a place to connect, led you to realize that there's a gap that exists which people would like to fill. And I think this is the reason why you decided to build the Coco community in the city centers rather than like the peripheral areas of Paris. And I think it'll be interesting to know your thoughts on that further. But okay, so which year did you start Coco community?
In 2020, during the COVID,
Right.
so it
And
was not the best time to quit your company and start a project. But at the same time, it was interesting, and there was a lot of opportunities in Paris during the COVID. Because first, I wanted to start by a big project, like a large project. You know, I was used with this old company or ex-company I was with to do it big, because I was always on huge projects, always talking about $1 billion investments. And so I was not afraid to start a large project. And I started to find fundings to buy a building in the center of Paris in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods, and started to work on that in order to transform an office building into a co-living space. And then the COVID arrived. We all had to go back home, and the project wasn't feasible anymore and was too ambitious during COVID. I was back home, like trying to figure out how I can do that from, the start, how to start. And I had this trip that I made with Guy and Fabrice, actually, with Coliving, this learning expedition in Israel, Tel Aviv. We went there and we met various companies. And one of the companies was super inspiring. It's called Van Living.
yeah, I know.
And Van Living, what they were doing is like, and we visited the place, they were, they were not a building. They were a distributed co-living space, meaning they had, a flat where they did flat sharing. Then another street, they would have a cafe. Another street, they would have a co-living space. Then you would walk a little bit and you end up in their event space. And so I said, wow, that's super interesting. Finally, you don't need to go with a building for a start. You can start small and just learn by growing. So I said, okay. I noticed that in the building I was living in Paris, there was some tenants leaving because of COVID, living back home, some international tenants that were living in our building. I asked to the owner of the building if I could rent those, and I explained him my project, and they said, okay, let's try, They didn't have many more alternatives. I started to rent those apartments, furnish them, renovate them, and re-rent them on, platforms, normal booking platforms, long-term platforms. And then I started to rent a boutique that was downstairs, on the ground floor of the same building, that was bankrupt because of COVID. I renovated it, made it a co-working space and event space. And then another boutique just next door in the same building also went bankrupt. So I rented it, mixed those two boutiques to make it bigger. And we had then a larger space for co-working. And it was also, we had a meeting room. So it was better for the events. And that's how we started.
Oh, that's amazing. I think these are pieces of the puzzle. When we look back, we understand that okay, this is what led to you building the Coco community. But I think it's amazing. It feels surreal. Like I also have a very similar story. I took up a 6-bedroom apartment first and then rented it out in 7 days. And then I took the next apartment and then I took the next apartment. By the end of year one, I was managing about 100 rooms and it was all distributed. And all of this happened as part of a process, right? One thing led to other. Somebody referred someone. There was a place available and we pitched for it. And it was so organic that we didn't realize what we are building until the end of year one, where we said that, oh no, now we have 100 tenants living with us. And I think this is a great lesson for the upcoming co-living founders that you don't need something big to start. If your intentions are right, if your concept is solid, and if you have figured out what you want to build, and if your vision is clear, I think there can be multiple ways of starting, similar to how you started or how I started, and then take it from there, prove the concept, build the brand, and then continue to grow it slowly. And I think slow is fast in the co-living ecosystem, because what I've realized is the more faster you try and grow, the harder you fall if you're not kind of up to the mark on all aspects of your business, whether it's operations, whether it's marketing. But yeah, I think that's a great way to start for somebody. So okay, now in 2020 you took this apartment, you took these 2 boutiques, you started. Now, what were the challenges that came initially? Like, what did you face any specific challenges?
Yeah, for sure. There is so much challenges at every step. First, I had, at one point, this is a lot of work, right? You have to do the cleaning. You have to do the inventory of each apartment. At each time there is someone coming, someone leaving, you have to do the maintenance of the apartment, the renovation, the booking. And I was alone. So the first difficult thing I think was to find a founder, because you can't do it alone. I mean, it's too much work.
Right. Right.
It's a very hard to do events, co-working, renovation, maintenance, all that I said. You add trying to create a community, trying to meet with everybody, to always be in a good mood, because you need to represent at the co-living space and you need to always be welcoming. And if you're super stressed by all those urgencies, it's going to be hard. So you really need to find a co-founder, I think, quite fast. And I was super, lucky to find a person. But it was after 1.5 years, I had a first co-founder, then a second. The second one was completely transformative to our project and to my life, because I was overwhelmed with too many things, and it created a bottleneck.
All right. So one question naturally that comes to my mind right now, that in our earlier conversations, you have always told me that I wanted to create in central locations, high-end co-living. What was your reason for picking up a luxury segment of co-living or high-end co-living in the center of the city? You could have got much cheaper acquisition of supply in the periphery or in the rural areas and then do co-living there. Like, so what was your reason of building it in a city center in a luxury segment?
Well, in the luxury segment, probably because I was coming from the corporate world, and the prices we would pay for serviced apartments were quite high. So I was used to going to luxury hotels, to luxury serviced apartments. I knew there was a demand from the corporate companies that I was working with. And when I was traveling, I was always trying to go to the best neighborhoods in order to really understand the city and make sure I am in the place where you have the best bars, the best restaurants, the best. I think I wanted to experience the best life in each city. So to me, it was very important to offer to our Colivers the best places in Paris, and I take a lot of time to select the best apartments in the best streets. You know, in a given street, you can have a building that is super nice and a building that is not so nice, even though it's a nice neighborhood. So
Yeah.
I take a lot of time to take the best apartments because at the end, it's very hard to find. And if you offer great places that are very silent, that are the light is great, you end up giving the best to your Colivers. And I think you have a reward at one point. But it's true that the price point is quite higher than traditional co-living spaces, especially of flat sharing, because we only have individual apartments. And then you have to
Right.
add the events that we organize, and this has a cost, and the co-working space, which is also in the best neighborhood of Paris. Our co-working space and our apartments are really located in the most expensive neighborhoods of Paris, which is an expensive city. So
Understood. So it's also a lot to do with city because Paris, being the luxury capital of the world, brings in that kind of people who want to come and stay in Paris, and they look for that luxury, they look for those neighborhoods. So I think it also aligns with the image that the city holds, and then that kind of brings similar kind of profile people together. So I think that's great. That's also a learning for the co-living founders, because the nature of the city is very important in who you are targeting and how you are building up your product. Because if you go and build a luxury space in a rural area, that probably won't be a right fit. So you need to understand the locality, the nature of the locality, what kind of people does that locality attracts, and then decide on your ideal customer profile. I think that's something that's a good learning for all of us. Now, how big is Coco community right now? How many units do you currently manage across the central Paris?
we have 80 apartments,
Okay.
and we are experimenting different size of apartments. We go from 15 square meter to 100 square meter,
Right.
just to see the level of how premium we can go, what is the market on each of those segments. And so we are learning, we are trying some new neighborhoods to see if there is a gentrification in Paris. So you have new neighborhoods that are becoming very nice, at least for Parisians, but sometimes they are not yet very well known for the international travelers. So step by step, we are entering new neighborhoods that are a little bit less known than traditionally Le Marais or Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which are the two most requested neighborhood in Paris where tourists want to go.
Understood.
So we are trying to
And
add
what does
new
your
neighborhoods to our offer.
yeah, understood. And what does the ideal customer profile looks like? Who do ideally come and stay at your places? Are they kind of digital nomads, or they professionals, or like who do you host? Like what's the profile of customers you host?
So they are all international, 1/3 from North America, 1/3 from Europe, 1/3 from Asia, South America, Africa, Russia, I would say. So it's very diverse in terms of origin. And we also have a very diverse crowd in terms of occupation jobs. We have some ballet dancer, we have some opera producers, so let's say more artists. We have some entrepreneurs, some professors in geopolitics, in history, psychanalysts. And that's really the value I think that we have. It's the knowledge of our community. Each
Interesting.
person in our community is usually, because they have the means to go in apartments in Paris in great neighborhoods, they usually are quite talented, like in what they do. They are experts in what they do. They are very like for the ballet dancers, they are the ballet dancers that are at Bastille, which is the opera in Paris, and those people, those dancers, they are probably the best in the world. Same for the operas. So we organize in order to create a community, to foster the community. We organize events where the tenants do a talk, like a TED talk, but we call that Coco talk. And they do an inspiring talk about their job or about what they do. And this is very important to make sure we socialize or we create a platform to socialize through our events. And I personally interview every person that comes to our apartments. I ask them what is the talk they are going to do when they will be at Coco.
So you're saying that because of the way you have structured the product, which is a premium product, in the best neighborhoods, the kind of people you attract are very, very highly talented people. And because they're talented and they are best in their fields, you utilize that to do community building, which is where the events come from, because they're TED Talk styled, where people share their experiences and the other people listen because they're listening to somebody which has great talent. So it's a lot more authentic, and that's your way of community building. Do you do anything else from a community building perspective for your residents?
Yeah, we have so on the same kind of events. We do a lot of events every month. The talks. Also, we organize exhibitions from artists who are local artists typically, and we also have dinners. We organize dinners, and we try in our events, like the exhibitions typically, to have the local people involved in our events. So, for example, some of the talks have been made by some neighbors who are very good in a given field. We have neighbors. We have a neighbor in the building where we started Coco, who has created a company on blockchain and bitcoins. So he did a talk about blockchain and how it works and the finance of Bitcoin, typically.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's what.
So
we
you're
do.
also
And
doing
then
local. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and then we have a WhatsApp group for all the community, where, of course, this is where we talk about the events that we are going to organize. But it's also a way for the tenants or the co-livers to exchange together. And this is something we try to improve, the fact that they organize some events without us always being the organizers. Like we always talk about bottom up, top down. So we
Yeah.
are a little bit too top down. We would like to be a little bit more bottom up. So probably we'll hire a community manager at one point to do that.
Understood. And so it's very interesting that you say that. A lot of people miss this trick of involving the local neighborhoods into your community building strategy, because that helps a lot. First of all, you are economically, you also contribute to their businesses economically. And if you include the local ecosystem, that kinds of comes together to help you grow, help you become better. I think that's also an interesting learning. So also, okay, you said that you took two boutiques and then converted into event space and co-working spaces. So are your co-working spaces open for general public, or it's only for the residents?
It's also open for the public because what I lacked when I was traveling around the world was contact with locals. You know, I
Right.
always was in those very luxurious hotels, and you only have expats. Locals are not usually going there. And I really
Right.
wanted a place where you learn the culture of the country you are sent to by your company. For example, when I was living in or working in China or in Korea or in Japan, it was very hard to meet with locals. It was very difficult because I didn't know the language. So I didn't make friends, it was impossible and
Understood.
very difficult to meet with Japanese in daily life. So I really thought that it was very important to me that the persons that come to Coco, they learn about the French culture. Our next event is a coach that is going to talk about the French culture and the specificities of the French culture. She's American Franco-American. She's an executive coach, and that's a way to learn. And in this talk, there will be some French people that are from the co-working space. Of course, we are very small. We are still a small brand, and we are inviting our friends, my personal friends, to meet with the community. And there is this mix that is very nice for these internationals, because as soon as they arrive at Coco, they meet new friends that are internationals, but also some French people.
Very interesting. So how did you fund this whole project, right? The Coco community. How did you raise any external funding? Did you raise any friends and family round initially? Like, how did you initially get the money? Did you put your own money?
Yeah.
And how you have grown? Like, did you raise any external funding? If you can share some insights there.
Yeah, that's very important. I mean, to be able to fund your co-living space and growing small, having a very low growth like us. I mean, we are not growing fast compared to other companies like I don't know, Selena or all those multi-billion dollar companies that finally went a little bit too fast. So we did grow gradually, apartment by apartment, continuous improvement, and we funded by equity raise with friends and family. I started to fund myself because I was the first boutique. The renovation were paid by my own savings that I have saved during my international corporate life. And then I asked to my friends and family and some business angels. And now we are wondering what's the next step. Like, willing to create an international company. We are willing to go abroad, but at which pace? We don't want to go too fast. And we need to make sure that the investors that are coming to the equity round are really aligned with the project. So we are at the middle of the road here on how we continue growing, because we can accelerate. I think we have now an offer that is very well appreciated. Very good comments on Google. They are very impressive. It's hard to arrive to this level. We have 4.9. We've always been trying to have the best comments because then you have word of mouth. You are known for being serious in your operations. So we don't want to change and by growing too fast, having reviews that are starting to be less enthusiastic. So yeah, we
Right.
have to go to the next
Right.
step of funding.
So yeah, I think the learning from that part is initially it is great if you start small, put your own money in, figure out operations, figure out the brand, what do you want to do, and then slowly grow from there. Once you reach a sustainable size, then you can look out for external capital to kind of look into. I think that's something that I've seen multiple people doing and successfully expanding after that. And you picked on a very right note, right? You don't want to grow too fast, because we have seen in
Mm.
the market now that people who are growing too fast are setting themselves up for failure, because either the operations doesn't see, ultimately it's a real estate business, it's a people to people business, right? We are into rental business. So if we grow too fast and the experience doesn't scale with the growth of your supply, it doesn't end well for most of the brands, and it creates issues. So I think this is also a learning for us, in order to see that slow growth is okay as long as it is consistent, and it helps you to scale your operations slowly, give you an experience to build a more sustainable and a profitable brand. And
Yeah, and
okay, so while we were talking about the operations, right? Do you guys outsource your operations, or do you have an internal team that helps you do the operations right now?
we tend to do a lot of things ourselves because we want to create competencies on the long run. Um, so we are doing the renovation. We are project managing the renovations, project managing the choice of all the furnitures. We don't have a designer. It's my co-founder who does that. We are doing all the maintenance ourselves. Of course, when we don't manage to do it, we have experts like plumbers or coming from outside. But usually we try to do everything ourselves in terms of maintenance. And the cleaning is done internally also. Maybe we will one day use a company for cleaning, but today we consider it's hard to have external cleaners because they don't know which apartment we are in. Sometimes our planning evolves a lot. We have unexpected events where you have to clean something very fast. So we have our internal team.
Interesting. So you would recommend people to have internal team first before outsourcing anything, so that they can create competencies, learn about the smaller aspects of doing things the right way, and then kind of take it from there. So
Yeah, because I think the co-living business is a business of details. People probably see it as okay, it's property management, it's low value added. But in fact, to manage so many details is very, very hard. You're not having huge profits, right? So to have teams that are knowledgeable, experienced, detail oriented, not too expensive, otherwise you don't do profits. You really need to think about the process. You need to implement a lot of processes. Um, Otherwise you do mistakes like booking twice the same apartment. This can happen, right? It can easily happen. Actually, when you have 80 apartments, you start to be, if you don't digitalize early, you will have
right,
mistakes that are going to start and that are going to grow. So this is also a good thing when you don't grow too fast. It's
fast.
like you can really improve your process each time you have something that goes wrong. You need to identify the root cause of what went wrong and implement the process so it's not going to happen again. And then it's not only about processes, right? It's about experience. And back to my first point, you need people that are really trained to and that care. And I think, our team, they are also the people that are organizing the events, and they are there at the events, and they know the tenants, they know the co-livers, and we become friends with the co-livers. Sometimes we go to the birthday party of the co-livers, we go to why not in holidays with them. So I think the teams, they have to really have the willingness to make the co-livers live a great experience. And it's a lot about details.
No, and I think you have hit a very right chord. It's not being spoken enough, right? Because co-living is a new industry, building a team is one of the most important thing in the life cycle of building a co-living business, because if it goes right, you can create a great brand. Because as you said, right, co-living is a business of details. If your team is detail oriented, they're focused and they know what they're doing, they understand your vision and they're translating that vision into practice, that creates a hell lot of difference in building a great brand. And if like it's so difficult to find those right people, because co-living is a new industry, you generally hire from parallel industry. You hire from hospitality, residential, property management, and you get those people in to change their thought process on the traditional, from the traditional mindset to the new co-living mindset. It's actually a journey, and this is where a lot of co-living brands struggle. And when they scale too fast, they get people from all the allied industries, and then they're not able to train them with the same vision, with the same rigor. And that's where the downfall of the experience for a co-living company starts, and that leads to a lot of further problems down the road. So I think it's absolutely necessary to find the right people, train them well, get them up to speed on your vision, share your vision with them more often, and then create this army of people who will then take your thought process and vision to the next level. So how big is a team right now? Like
We are
for
five,
your
two
5 people?
founders and 3 persons.
Okay.
Of course, the founders, we work a lot because what I didn't expect during when I transitioned to hospitality was that you don't have Saturdays and no Sundays and no evenings, basically. And that's the founders who do that, right? You have it's not always easy to have your teams working on Saturdays and Sundays. And when you're at the beginning of the project, like us, the founders do a lot.
Yeah. And they have to prepare to do a lot, because a lot of times people feel that no, we'll hire somebody, they will do this, they will do this. But until and unless you get your hands dirty, I don't think it's something that works pretty well.
I think especially like because I didn't do hospitality before, I didn't do real estate, nor did my co-founder. So we know nothing about those things, and we just learn, by walking, by trying, by doing mistakes, and what's important is to consistently progress, continuously say, okay, that's how we're gonna do it, and always. Sometimes it's hard. You have really people that are complaining, and it's hard because you're tired. It's the end of the week, and they come up with bad news, and you always have to breathe, be calm, be nice, acknowledge what you did wrong, and then try to say, okay, what is the process that we are going to change? How do we do not to do it again? And co-living is a huge market, so you don't need to go fast. I mean, you will grow. If you're good, you will
Yeah.
grow. There is no end. There's no market. It's not a market of winner takes all.
Yeah.
You will have space for everybody, for every co-living brand. The aim is to create a great experience, consistent experience, improve, and you will stay there, and you will be big, because if you stay for 50, you can stay for 15, 20 years. You will be a totally different company, but you don't need to go super fast. What you need to do, probably, you need to be profitable. And in order to be profitable fast, you need to grow at a pace that enables you to be profitable. Because at the beginning, you're not going to be profitable because you hire people and you don't have enough apartments. So you have
Right.
to find the right speed, because, yeah, you need to go at a pace that enables you to be cash profitable
Right.
earlier on, so you are independent, but you don't need to go too fast. Otherwise, you create a bad experience. So there is a fine line to find.
Right. And I think that brings us to the last part of this podcast. And I think I had a lot of learnings. The biggest learning I'm taking away from today's conversation is co-living is a business of details. I think it's a beautiful line. I'll start using it in a lot of my conversations. So thanks for that. But the last question for you is, if you have to give top 3 advice to upcoming co-living founders, what would those be? If you have 1, 2, 3, any kind of advices that you would like to give a new co-living founder, what would that be?
But first, just is the what we just said. Don't be jealous when you see co-living companies going fast and raising tons of money.
Right.
Of course, you're like, why they do that? Why can't I raise much more money, go faster, hiring 200 people? Maybe, in fact, it's more difficult to go slow and make it nice. The number of companies that I see that do that and have very bad comments, and like they have 3 or 2.5 on Google, and they have 2,000 rooms. I don't see the point. I think you're gonna end up in a bad situation if you do that. It's better, I think, to be profitable early on, to be very, very rigorous in the capex you are using, in the cost structure, in order to be independent by being cash flow positive. As soon as you're cash flow positive, then you can start going faster. And as soon as you have also a great experience that is consistent, you can go faster. So that's my first advice. Don't be jealous. enjoy the fact that you're improving, even if it's not so fast. The second is, yes, this cash flow situation. I did a mistake earlier on by not being good in anticipating my cash flow. In fact, I was confused between EBITDA, like operating income, and cash flow. Because in a very large company, you don't care about cash. You have
Right.
cash. Like my company was super successful, they had tons of money. So you never know what is cash. You look at EBITDA, EBIT, and you talk about that. And in fact, it's only about cash. And because we have a lot of deposits, that's really something that we didn't anticipate. We have deposits, and it blurs your cash movements. You think you have cash because you didn't. So separate at the beginning, separate the deposits from the cash of your real operations. Otherwise, you can have bad news, and you need to ask to your investors money urgently, and that's not great. So
Yeah.
be good in planification in your Excel spreadsheets. So that's the second. And bring your personality in in the project. For example, I was always traveling abroad. I was raised when I was a kid abroad because my father was working in many countries. So we always were traveling in other cultures. And so I really love to discover other cultures. And I brought that to Coco. Coco for me is bringing all those cultures to Paris in my building. I live in the building where we started. So this is something I brought that. And also I was in a think tank before, about Europe. And I did every month on Sundays, we would discuss and debate about Europe with professionals working to build the European Union. And I'm trying to create this in the co-living space, which is a place for conversation, because I think we live in a polarized world where people have difficulties to talk together and to disagree. People are very polarized, becoming violent. And to me, co-living is a way to put people from different origin, from different backgrounds, from different opinion together, and it's a platform for a conversation to improve how the world runs. So that's great when you're an entrepreneur compared to having a corporate life. You can bring something and you can change the world. So what I try to do is to create a platform for conversations. And so that's why we have these events. And I want to really have more and more events with a lot of very interesting people that can exchange and can talk together, even though they are not agreeing. So we had, for example, a geopolitical talk about Ukraine and Russia. We did that. And we have Ukrainian and we have Russians who are co-livers. So that's the kind of thing I want to do, to be able to talk about every subject at Coco.
Interesting. And I think you summed up really well, right? That cash flow is the king. Don't blur it with deposits. Make sure that you have knowledge about what are your cash flows and so that you can build it profitably. Bring in your personality, bring in different aspects of who you are into building your brand, because I think that goes a long way. And I think it's also about not like being very focused and not being jealous of what others are doing and keep building your own. I think as you again said one thing, that it's not winners take all market. It's a large enough market and it'll continue to grow from here. It's a very early industry, and that there in next 20 years we will see a lot more evolution. We'll see a lot, like it's an ever expanding, like housing is something that will keep needing more and more. So I don't think it's going anywhere. So I think that's great. Thanks a lot, Frederic, to take out time and have this chat with me. I think a lot of golden nuggets, a lot of interesting points for people to look forward to. I will put your coordinates in the description of this video. If anybody wants to connect with you directly, engage and talk more, they can do that. But yeah, thanks a lot for taking our time.
Thank you, Mayank. And I hope it will help some entrepreneurs and co-livers to come and improve the co-living scene, because you can do a lot of different co-living. You can do cafes, you can do bars, you can do a lot of amenities, gyms, own the real estate. You can develop co-living in so many ways. So it's a very exciting movement. And also what I like about co-living is that the people that are in the co-living industry are usually very generous. And I met great people, and I think it's an industry of people that believe in something, in the fact that the world can be better, and they want to act. And I see a lot of generous personalities, very gentle and kind people, and that's great. I think this is a very important movement that is going to change the hospitality world.
I don't doubt it. Thanks a lot.
Industry-wide change is a collective dream. Collaboration, cooperation, that's our theme. From multi-generational homes to global scenes, we shape the future, living out our means. Each story unfolds with the art of code, lessons in the lows, wisdom untold. Ask your questions, join the conversation. Together we build a resilient foundation. Resilience, innovation, the keys to thrive in the Coliving movement. We come alive, from struggles to triumphs, we pave the way. In our global article community, we find the sway.